Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is the last of our roundtables, the London Webfest 2021 season. How quickly a year has gone by. I'm Sol Marin, and I'm the festival director for the London Webfest. Now, as always, with our Q&As, we'll be talking with some of the best talent on the festival circuit right now. And this time round, we've invited writers, producers and writer-producers from this month's official selections. We'll also be joined by our guest judge, Dean Batali. Now, Dean has served as an executive producer as well as a writer on classic shows like Buffy the Vampire Sayer, That 70s Show, and also my own personal favourite, which is the cult animation Duckman. Don't forget, we want to hear from you as well. You can always pose your questions down below to our panel just by adding them to the chat. Now, I'm very eager for you to get to meet everybody. We've got a full house this evening and a couple of people who I think will join us as we go along. But as always, as is fitting, as is always the way at London Webfest, let's show you a bit of their work so you know who we're speaking to.
Hey, remember me? You shouldn't be here. Why not? Contagious. Nah, I already got what you got. What? You think because I'm a grown-up? Believe me, I'm not that grown-up.
Wir sind in 10 Minuten im Einblick. Ich kann dir helfen.
Hey! Lass sie gehen. Ich habe die Polizei gerufen. Ich habe alles auf Video, dein Gesicht, dein Nummernschild. So, Ellie, this is for your blog, your travel blog?
Yeah, Naunus are doing a piece on my blog and they want some photos to go along with it. So I saw your stuff and it's beautiful, really amazing. It's really, really nice to be in one place for work because, I travel so much. It's just nice to have a base.
Yeah. Wait, is it?
Yeah.
Swimmer. Said something about leaning the other way.
You weren't ready.
I'm just gonna have a check. Come and have a look.
I think that's the shot.
Yeah?
I don't know.
Is this first time getting photos?
No, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's always weird. It's always weird.
I was thinking about paper cuts.
Yes!
You know, David, you could learn a lot from Simon.
Sorry.
He may have unusual techniques, but he's making this company money. You could take a leaf out of his book.
A leaf out of his book? What, like his casual misogyny?
David?
Or when he stole my fucking coffee mug? Or his disgusting eating habits? I'll take a leaf out of his book.
David, are you listening? This is exactly what we talked about in your last appraisal.
Kia ora.
The old library's trying to rent books off you now, eh?
Yeah, I'm still chasing this international scholarship thing. Got the big exam next week.
Good luck. Yeah, that's your ticket out of here, then, eh?
I'll still be here for a bit. My pop's getting on nowadays, so I'm just trying to spend as much time with him while we're both still in Kura.
That's good then, eh? I mean, not good that he's like getting old and fucking dying and shit. Anyway, how's work? How's life? How's fucking anything other than this conversation?
Nick, can you hear
me!
Oh, for fuck's sake. Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you. All I can hear is that I'm not enough, you know? God, I really don't feel well. Jeez.
Are you okay?
I just can't believe it's happening.
Hello and welcome, everybody. Well, almost everybody. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Claudia will be with us in just a moment. Thank you so much for joining us, especially on a Friday evening. How's everyone doing?
Doing great.
Very well, very well. Nice to see you, Sol.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. Now, I think it's probably best that we just start in a very easy fashion, which is to go around the room and tell us who you are and what project, what series, what short film you have in the festival this month. Who'd like to start? Dean, you are. I should point out, Dean is our guest judge. He is a producer and writer extraordinaire. If you'd like to just talk about your credits, that would be fantastic.
No, but I don't like to brag, but I love it when anybody's seen something like Duckman, which maybe like 600 people have ever seen.
I reached out to you based on Duckman. Don't get me wrong. That 70s show and Buffy the Vampire Sayer are part of my upbringing and part of my kind of like TV education.
Yeah.
But Duckman was why I wanted you to be part of the festival in the first place. It is
that was actually the first time I got paid for it, as they say. That was the first job my writing partner and I ever got. We had written a Simpsons spec script. This is last century I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got handed to the producers of that show because another producer read it and passed it on. It actually goes into the fact that I've never had to ask anybody to read anything in Hollywood. Everybody's offered eventually, but they passed it on and he read it. And I got a call back when they were answering machines and they said, hey, we want you to write a script. So we did that.
I mean, that has to say something about the quality of the script and also the fact that has started an amazing journey within the TV industry, because Duckman is niche. I mean, I genuinely adore it, but Duckman
there's
is
another show that was on Nickelodeon called The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody knows that show and Buffy share a DNA, because we actually got our job on Buffy based on The Adventures of Pete and Pete, which was this cult show on Nickelodeon in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody who's seen it, like when I say that, their just eyes light up. It was very low watched Nickelodeon 1995, 96. And it was that script that got us the job on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because it was a dialogue driven comedy about two brothers named Pete. But enough about me. Let the other.
I also remember that. I mean, you'll be shocked, all of you, to find out that I'm 40. So Pete and Pete, Duckman, Buffy, that 70s show are all within my wheelhouse. It's all the things I quote, no matter how old I get. That's amazing, though. It's really great to know that one thing begets another. You know,
it's weird to know. All of us look back on our careers and wonder if those moments of, like, if we hadn't done Pete and Pete, I don't think I'd be sitting here with you, because that led to Buffy, which got us on the 70s show. It's all that mystery chain that you look back on a career and go, take one of those chains out, and I wonder if it ever would have connected. I think I made a metaphor of some kind there.
It was very good. I'm actually going to come back to this at a later time, because it's you know, it falls into the wheelhouse of what I'd like to talk about. Just for the time being, Jack, if you want to tell us, you know, a bit about yourself and what the project is that, you know, that's here, Gross Misconduct.
Of course,
Jack's
yeah.
So,
Gross Misconduct was actually my first short film, and it basically came from an idea of a colleague I once worked with that drove me up the wall a little bit, and I thought to myself, be a really good story of a really small office, two gigs that were completely different to each other, and with a dark twist. I started writing it, and I was really lucky that this is my first short film, that I had a really great team come on board. Nick Coop, the producer that came on, Michael Middleton, the director, and the other writer, Laura Major, helped really shape the piece of gross misconduct together. And really, what it is about, you know, the person that you hate most in the world being hated by other people, and it's just a problem that you have. And then there's a bit this character of Simon, played by myself, being this gross guy, but it's actually David, played by Amit Shah, that does the gross things by killing Simon off.
I think anyone who's been in that position, you know, everyone in the entertainment business has probably at some point worked in a horrendous environment where incredibly bad kind of like interactions with your colleagues somehow is kind of there's a bonus attached to it. It's such a small world when it comes to, you know, I live in London also. Nick Coop, obviously, who produced it, has been a guest judge on this and makes amazing work. You also have Kat Bond, who's in that as well, who is, you know, widely known on the festival circuit, on the comedy circuit as well. And it's only just now that I've put together that you are the awful person in the office as soon as you started speaking, and I was like, slick that hair back a little bit. And as we saw from the clip, you have your fingers chopped off. So that's some very good acting, and I can't believe that's your first project.
I did.
David, tell us a bit about why you're here and, you know, what your work has been.
Yeah, I've still got my fingers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, hi, I'm David Fernandez. I created and directed a project called Creepy Bits. So there's 6 extremely short horror films. So there's 5 of them that are out right now, and the finale is coming out on Halloween Eve at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in North America. Yeah, so the first episode is in the London Web Fest. That was the only one that was done by the deadline, basically. And it's you know, it comes kind of from my own parenting experience. I have a 6-year-old, and you know, when she was a bit younger, we always had a baby monitor in the room, and anytime that stupid thing made any kind of slight little sound, we were like, what, you know, what's happening? Is she dying? And so there's sort of a paranoia that comes around with it, and I think it is very much a kind of symptom of modern parenting, that we have like video surveillance and tracking devices on our children at all times. And so I guess the idea sort of stemmed out of that. And in fact, the very first baby monitor I ever had was an audio only one. I had my mom, who was in her 80s, living in the basement of her house. We have a granny suite there. And she was a little bit sick, couldn't go to the bathroom, and needed help going to the bathroom. So I gave her this baby monitor. I said, Mom, you know, if you need anything, just call out. I'll wake up. I'll come down and help you. And sure enough, like the first night, I'm sound asleep, and in the middle of the night, I hear, David. And I'm like, Mom, don't whisper. I don't need you to whisper. Just talk in your normal tone of voice, and I will come down and I will help you, but no more whispering. And so they've always kind of creeped me out, and that's sort of, I think, sort of where the first episode came from, is the creepiness of baby monitors. Yeah.
It is a slightly haunting. I mean, the fact that it's audio only and there's a creeping parent just kind of like whispering to you is haunting enough. But the video quality of baby monitors is something that is haunting within itself. Just that grainy, anything can happen. Shadows just cast this weird kind of, it's a very good. It's infrared,
so you're not even seeing like the whole color spectrum, and because it's a very low shutter speed, everything's kind of like stuttered and blurry. I mean, paranormal activity has picked up on that very well.
I do have to ask, the scene where she's eating popcorn, as we just saw a second ago.
Yeah,
I'm a huge horror fan. You know, like I'm 30s and 40s, 50s, you know, whatever. I'm a massive horror fan. Was that kind of like taken from Halloween with a little girl watching? I was wondering if it's the same audio clip in the background from the TV, or have I just imagined that myself?
You might be imagining it. I mean, and it might just be, you know, in my subconscious, because I've seen Halloween quite a few times. So, and that audio clip, I think the sound designer picked it up off of the Prelinger archives. It was some, I think it might be in Greek or Latin or something. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think I was reading too
that
much
we could
into
use royalty free that we had in the background there. So
good stuff. And Mr. Gonzalez, last but not least, tell us about your project.
Oh, I don't know how I'm going to follow up creepy mum story.
Just whisper it all into the mic.
Yeah, I was so tempted to just go, dang. Nice to meet you all. I'm Gabriel. I wrote and directed and produced, along with the Gorilla 59 Gang, all of them web series, which is a collection of vignettes about dating in London, and it sort of morphs into something, hoping a bit more inventive than that. It sounds so broad, but the idea of the show was to sort of unspool a very specific instance or experience into like a 5-minute sort of window into someone's life, but you'd kind of feel like you'd watched a full sort of rom-com episode by the end of it somehow, and which kind of seems crazy to sort of infer, because they're only about 5 to 7 minutes long, but they really sort of spoke to what the group was about, and we were able to invite other directors. And at one point, Mike Middleton was actually on board to do a couple as we were heading into a second part. I know he directed your film's Good Friend as well, but COVID put a sort of stop to that, which is why we only released 3.
Yeah.
But we're very, very happy to be sharing with you all tonight and then talking about it and all of your great work as well.
It's an amazing. It's such a unique piece, and for one of the reasons why it's one of our official selections, because it's individual snapshots of people's lives, and it doesn't follow, you know, your stereotype kind of pattern of writing. There's not kind of like, oh, here's the beginning, middle, and end. It's almost like here's a snapshot of 2 to 3 people's lives and what they're going through right now. And I found that very refreshing, because you don't always have a resolution. You don't always have your standard beginning, middle, and end, and nothing really ends up how you think it will. And it's nice, you know, having lived in London for 20 plus years, it's nice to find myself to be able to attribute parts of my life to several of the episodes, even though they are all wildly different.
Because kind of wanted to sort of everyone to brush into everybody, so they were connected in a very light and sort of happenstance way, and in doing that, you kind of doing exactly what you've just said there. People watching and realizing, oh, there's a part of my experience there which I recognize and can enjoy, and you know, you can realize it's not so far down the road, or you know, on another connection on another app, someone's having something very different, but with someone who you possibly met as well. So it's nice to hear you say things like that. So it's kind of the full intention of the show.
And again, one of the reasons why, I mean, all of you, that you're all here because your work has spoken to both myself and to Dean. Now, I think it follows on, which is to ask, what is it about your projects that has made you want to be involved, has made you want to write, has made you want to produce? How did you get to where you were with these specific projects? And Dean, yourself, what was it about, you know, the following on of each step? As you say, work begets work, but how did you get from one to the other? And for the rest of you, specifically about the projects in the festival itself. Who's the bravest one to answer first? That's the question.
I don't honestly understand the question. What?
Oh, I'm so sorry. So with the project that's in London Web Fest, what was it about the story that drew you to it? What was it about it that made you want to produce it? Had the gumption to produce it? Had the impetus to write? You know.
I mean, I can start. I did 6 of these, so this was one of them, and I had a huge brainstorm of ideas of creepy little scenarios that we could do, and ultimately part of the decision of which ones that we would do came down to access to locations, because this was extremely low budget. There were only 12 people on the crew. non-union cast and that kind of thing. So, you know, where we were going to shoot it, and I think like part of the overall production value of it in terms of like finding like interesting locations was a big part of the decision. So this one was shot in a house. It's my house.
Okay.
But the other ones, like one takes place on an airplane, another one takes place in underground tunnels, another one takes place in a police interrogation room, another one in a hospital ward from the 1930s. So like in where I live in Hamilton, Ontario, which is about 70 kilometers from Toronto, we have quite a lot of studios, a lot of Netflix and Amazon shows that are shooting in the area. So there's been sort of a huge upswing in the availability of standing sets, which are, you know, sets that are always up but just have to be redressed or relit or whatever. And I just happen to be friends with one of the studio owners here, Simon Winterson, who owns Digital Canaries here in Hamilton, and so they were putting together an airplane set, you know, and that's so I wrote the stories around the best locations that I had access to, because I didn't have the budget to just like rent everything or build sets from scratch. So that was part of the thought, not just about like this one in particular, but like the series as a whole was, you know, doing something that was within the means that I had. I have been doing daddy daycare and daddy kindergarten with my lovely 6-year-old for the last year and a half, and I was starting to lose my mind. And I do have other projects that I'm developing that have much longer timelines. There's actually a teen ghost supernatural adventure story that we refer to, you know, like we're riffing on Buffy with that one. It's called Limbo, and we just started pitching it last week. And in fact, I got the script and pitch deck out to a production company today. But these types of things, just they take years to get into production. So I wanted to do something that I could achieve in a quick amount of time. We filmed in August, and the series is done. You know, like it's like the finale is coming out on Sunday. So yeah, I mean, like part of my thing was just what can I do? What do I have access to? And write the stories around what I have access to. And we did have a big list of, you know, ideas, and then we narrowed down the ideas and paired them with the best locations that we could find, basically. So yeah.
Amazing. It's the whole talk about sets and what you have access to reminds me hugely of you know, harking back to my love of horror films, Roger Corman and kind of Edward D. Woodward, you know, those things of what's available in front of us, what do we have access to, how do we make something around, you know, extra production value that we may not have been able to currently afford. And it's a great way of filmmaking. It's like, what's our challenge, what's our restrictions in front of us, how do we make something, and how do we make it now? That's really interesting to hear. Claudia is with us. Hello, Claudia. I'm so sorry you've been having difficulty backstage trying to get through to us. Now, Claudia, we've went around the panel, but we've missed out you. If you could tell us basically about your project at the London Web Fest, and also what led you to make that in the first place. I don't think Claudia can hear us. We are having the worst technical difficulties of all the panels at time. In the meantime, Jack, if you want to tell us about what kind of you spoke briefly earlier on about kind of your time in offices and your time with people who you're portraying. How did you come to write the story? How did you come to produce the story that you brought to the festival?
So, gross misconduct for me is inspired by programs like Inside Number 9. At the foremost, I'm an actor, and you like when you have to wait for the work to come to you, and I wanted to stop doing that. I wanted myself. So, and I wanted to make work that I wanted, and that, and I also love dark humor and horror. And I was really lucky that you see, like, you know, Michael's fantastic with horror, and Nick Coop, the producer, is fantastic with comedy. So putting those two together was a genius move, really. And it wasn't my part; it was all on them. But gross misconduct came from this love of sort of dark humor, and that we can play these funny moments and these funny beats and lines sort of interrupting each other, people talking over each other, but the horror that's in it is real horror. So when the fingers are cut off, there's no jokey sort of moments. It doesn't sort of go
It's
into
very graphic.
absurdity
It
of too
suddenly
much
comes from
blood.
nowhere, which is amazing.
Yeah. And you know, the stab in the eye, and it sort of goes a bit visceral and a bit sort of quick. And when you see Amit sort of really go and attack me, you're not quite sure what's going on and where you are, and you've gone from this sort of like thing that's making you laugh to this thing that's sort of now making you squirm and sort of question it a bit like that. And what also made me want to tell this story is that obviously the character Simon is this massive, horrible, fool, basically, but he is the only person that can get away with it in the office, and everybody likes him. Everybody wants to work with him. The boss, played by Catherine Bond, loves him. He gets Employee of the Month every month, and brilliant, played by Amit Shah, is the one that can die for who he is. And I really wanted to tell this story from David's perspective, where it's like kind of the Simpsons episode. What's the Frank Grimes, where he's the only one that can see how much of a donut Homer Simpson is. And so yeah, it's kind of from his perspective, but also playing on this fact that he's not quite. He's the only one that's aware of this, and he's the one that ends up, you know, eventually killing Simon.
It's great. I mean, it does lend itself. I love the kind of juxtaposition between just normal office life and then suddenly very graphic horror, and then back to it. It's, you know, the thoughts of that we all have in our own brains. And finally, Gabriel, what's your response?
Right. Well, I just got back with. So I work very closely with a sort of a routine or a regular gang or family, and we've just gotten back from a film, and it was kind of just like, it was a feature, so we were in really good shape in terms of, we felt very confident with our own language and our own simpatico with each other, but it was kind of, it very much felt like when you serve like one large project like that, you're very much at the behest of one writer and director, and that's not kind of the culture that we always wanted to be about. We really enjoy, you know, sort of taking time off from that role and helping, you know, another counterpart, another cohort sort of take that mantle and get their show up and running. That's kind of the whole point of us all working together. And all of them, I kind of had the idea, was like, all of them, like these little vignettes, these little inventive moments that free of the people in Guerrilla 59 are essentially, you know, working and dropping directors. So it just kind of made sense for us to, you know, spindle out of that, if that makes sense. And that kind of allowed everyone to chip in and shape these stories and come up with this sort of volume in the first round, and that's kind of how we got there. And it was kind of an exercise of trying to balance what all of us liked and what all of us would get excited about, and what would work in terms of, you know, our voices collectively and then somehow individually as well. And from there, I think it was very exciting. It was a sort of long journey and good practice for developing things by committee and producing things by committee, which isn't always the easiest thing, but there was a lot of skills and experiences that people could bring into all of them, and which made it an exciting journey throughout.
Now, with G59, with Guerrilla 59, I mean, you've worked on a variety of stuff, including, you know, Let's Get Macho, and also, would it be fair to say that you have an interest in horror, that there's something on like the darker side, or is it something that is mainly kind of story based? It's kind of like character based.
I think so. I certainly think there are better sort of the people more fluent in the group at horror for sure. I myself would, you know, I know Marcus and takes on a lot of that work in a sense, and sort of gets asked to do more of the horror pieces in that regard. The comedy and narrative is very much something that excites me, and ever since the beginning I've been going around saying, you know, I think I can do comedy and drama, and then you kind of, as you make your way in the industry, you realize, oh God, what have I said? This is actually this is quite a sword to fall on if it goes wrong. And I kind of was like, well, I've got to stick by that. So jump between all of them, and then having the G59 to sort of apply themselves to other projects, but under this banner that and this brand sort of thing, if you want to call it that, but very much being grounded in narrative and good story and good performances. That kind of excited all of us. And yeah, I mean, hopefully one day they'll let me do a horror, but I'm not sure I'm next in line quite yet.
Well, it's good. It obviously seems with like Marcus and with Dave as well, when it comes to, you know, Dave Ellis, when it comes to writing, that the horror is on their side. But with all of them and Let's Get Macho, the like production behind it, it's such a great kind of example of just, again, snapshots from people's lives, you know, from of just a small window of into somebody's existence. We are joined finally by James and by Claudia. Can you hear us both? Of you,
I can hear you. I think Claudia.
Thank you so much for meeting it. Claudia has come and gone. Claudia, can you hear us, or is it just a window into your life? I fear it is the latter. I'm so sorry. James, I'll catch you up very briefly. We've had great technical difficulties this time around. If you could just tell us a little bit about your project, about Kura. I mean, you submitted season 2, but I also watched season 1 just out of a love of the characters and of the story. If you could just tell us a little bit about the show, and also how you came to, just to catch you up, how you came to write, to produce, how that story came about.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks. I've been watching you guys in the backstage. Sorry about the technical joining issues.
No, that I'm not sure what's happening today. I'm trying to spin many plates behind the scenes.
Yeah, good on you. No worries. We're all here, sort of like many of us, I'm sure, in the web kind of creating world. We all do a bit more than our counterparts who have got an entire crew behind them in the real industry. But yeah, so Kura was a little show created by Vince and I. He and I grew up in this small town south of Auckland in New Zealand, and it's not traditionally, it's pretty lower socioeconomic kind of area, and we wanted to just tell a nice story about the place. Basically, that's where it started from. We created this little story that had not a big premise. It's about a guy who wants to leave his best friend behind and go and pursue life in Australia, which is such a common kind of idea down here, that you just cross the ditch and there's a bigger, wider world there waiting for you. But through the course of his journey, he kind of realizes what he loves about home, and the show kind of worked. And now we're writing our 3rd season, thankfully, which is pretty cool. But yeah, thanks for watching it. How it came about was actually a competition locally, an open call for ideas, which was one of those things where I'm sure you've all chucked your ideas in a hat and just hoped for the best before. But it seemed to work, and it rated really well with the audience. And at this stage, they just keep asking for more. So we're pretty stoked about that, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah, that's fantastic to be into your 3rd season on something that came off the back of, you know, someone asking for ideas. So I think, you know, one of my favorite things about Kura is it's quite a familiar story, that you know, wanting to leave what you think you're better than, wanting to find something better than what you're used to. I think what's beautifully done about it, and if other people were here as well, I can say, you know, the same, those kind of a familiar story that's told with a different twist, and also with an amazing production value as well. I think this probably relates to a lot of producers. How did you come about casting that? How did you come about finding the people for your story and kind of, getting to tell that particular vision that you had?
I think from the start, most of the characters are created based, and I'm sure this is the case with everyone's characters. You base little bits off people you study. Vince and I grew up together. We've been like best mates since we were 6 years old, and we're approaching 30 now. So there's a lot of memories in the tank that we had to draw on. A lot of great characters we've come across in life, and I think once we had this idea for two best friends based, very loosely on ourselves and our relationship of Vince wanted to head over to London, come over and hang out with you guys. He did that, and I decided I wanted to stick around. I really liked home. So I guess we channeled a bunch of our own stories and things that made us laugh. We wanted to do a comedy. It has a whole lot of heart, but if you're not laughing, you're not connecting sometimes. I don't think. And so we just slowly chipped away. It took us maybe 3 or 4 months to cast our pilot episode, which at this time we made was, it wasn't a sure thing. We had a whole lot of people jump on board and just give us their love. People liked the script and went, "Oh, this is cool. We haven't seen anything like this." I think, I don't know if that's because it was a smaller story than a lot of the stuff that's made locally. It's so much big budget and big ideas that sometimes aren't executed so well. So we had a really small budget, but a really committed team who wanted to do this. And after a while, we suddenly had this great ensemble of actors who had come from all walks of life, actual actors, people who we'd known, from our past. So we thought, why don't we just get you in and you have a read? And we sort of found that they would get it sometimes way more than an actor, someone who's lived it. But it's filmmaking. You need actors because you can't have a bunch of non-professionals to rely on an emotional story, getting across the line with your audience. So I think, in short, it was the same casting process anyone would do, using websites like Star Now and finding the non-actors out there in the world who are self-repped, going to agents, and just, a lot of scrambling across different methods to kind of pull this one together.
It's great to see that works, because we've all been in positions where you're trying to cast projects of varying funding sizes, and sometimes it's nice to know that works where locals, where people who are familiar to the story that you're trying to tell actually help to sell that more, and then the people who are you're finding from regular agents are the ones who are fronting it all. We are dropping panelists like flies. They come in, they come out. This is the last panel of the year and everything's going haywire. We've got a question coming from one of our audience members. We've touched on it before, which is, how did you get started? But it'd be nice to know, what advice would you give to someone out there starting on a new project, starting maybe on their first project, or just trying to find inspiration to get going with, the thing they want to make? Dean, if we could start with you.
Well, I want to say a couple of things to follow up on things that have been said. First of all,
yeah, please do.
I spent a lot of time in Hamilton, Ontario, because I was running a show called Good Witch for Hallmark.
Oh yeah,
we shot there, most of Hallmark. The Hamiltonians got really pissed at us because we would be shutting down their streets all the time.
Well, I think it was the people in Dundas. But
that's true, Dundas. Yeah, Dundas.
Wait, this is local. This is local kind of bad mouthing. I don't want
Dundas people are jerks. Hamilton people are just so nice.
You'll go far, Dean. You'll go far.
We were shooting at an old train station that's now an art museum.
Yeah.
That was like our town square, and I realized there was a big X in the like all the pathways formed a big X. And I realized they had filmed X-Men there, and my friend Ralph Werner produced that. So he had been standing in that same place in that big kind of old train station thing. But anyway, but you were talking about what draws you to projects. I've said this publicly, so they're not going to fire me. They already fired me. I hated Good Witch. When I took over that show, I thought it was unwatchable. I just didn't understand what it was, middle-aged romance. And I think I got the job because there was the word witch in it, and I had the Buffy experience, and they wanted to, when I took the job, I said I wanted to, make more teenagers, you know, up the teenager quotient. But my frustration, I'm kind of jealous when I hear younger than I, most people are younger than I now, filmmakers talking about what they're doing because it was just a story they wanted to tell. I don't know if I've ever gotten to tell a story I wanted to tell. Bits and pieces, yeah. But I just take jobs because those are the ones that get offered. I don't, you know, I'm pitching all the time. I've sold a pilot or two, but never created my own show that got on the air. And even when we got Buffy, my writing partner and I, we didn't understand what it was. It was kind of late. It was like a mid-season show, and like, okay, I guess we'll go do this. It's kind of interesting, but it's based on that movie that wasn't very good. And who's Joss Whedon?
I loved the movie, just so you know.
Well,
just
okay.
so you know, I loved it.
I figured you did because you seem
completely different from the series, but I loved it.
Yeah, but so I just like, especially, you know, look, you got to write and produce stuff that people want to watch. So I actually am not a person who says follow your passion. I think follow your passion isn't always the right advice. You got to follow your passion that fits the marketplace, because, you know, and so you got to find that mixture of, are people going to respond to this? But it's interesting hearing you guys talk about your different pieces. And I didn't tell you this, Saul, but I do judging of short film festivals here and there, colleges and other stuff. And I always feel out of place because I really don't understand the art form, and I'm not really a fan. And I kind of dread it when I have to start to watch short films. Oh, Claudia's back. Can she hear us yet?
Claudia's here.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, she can go next after this. But I found this was the best festival I've ever judged. And I'm not just saying that because it's on film or on tape here, but it might have been because it was different cultures, maybe. And so when you talk about, you know, I don't know the world of, you know, London, South Africa, Australia. I mean, it was just interesting to be taken into these cultures. But I generally fast forward a lot of short films once I see the first 2 or 3 minutes. I didn't do that with this festival, and the distance between first and third or fourth place was very short. So I just want to give that level of encouragement, and then just to see what, you know, this generation is doing with whatever equipment you have. There was never any question of, these all looked so professional, and the performances across the board were good. And it was funny, you were talking about horror and comedy. Somebody asked me recently to give them advice about blending horror and comedy like we did on Buffy. And I kind of wanted to say, well, if you have to ask, you're never going to get it right, because it's just as simple as, you know, you don't blend it. You don't have your characters leave the moment and make a quip. And yes, occasionally we would on Buffy, but she always made quips when she had the upper hand. So she knew she was in control, but not when she was being attacked. And I just find that in movies. I find it in the Avengers movies, like, it just takes you out of the moment of danger. But anyway, this is a long way of saying that if you can find something you're excited about and then go, hey, I wonder if other people would be excited about this too, then make that movie. I think too many short film writers just go, I want to make this because I want to make it. But somehow, at least the films that I saw, you all stumbled on stuff that made other people want to watch it too. And I'll say this finally about what I look for when I'm watching a short film. I've never read a book on structure. I've never taken a class on screenwriting. I started out as a playwright, and then suddenly I'm in television and learning structure. And I've read Save the Cat, but I'm so glad I didn't read it early, because it would have just screwed up how I tell stories. And to me, good structure is this. If page 1 makes you want to read page 2, and page 2 makes you want to read page 3, and you just do that for 120 pages, you have a movie. And all of your movies, and I only saw however many I saw, 11 of them. But the first minute made me want to watch the next minute. And some of it was, and that's not the case with half of the short films that I see, you know, and so I just encourage you on that level. If you can piece together a bunch of entertaining images with a bunch of entertaining words, you eventually have what I call the illusion of structure, and something that people actually want to watch. Anyway.
I appreciate your honesty, because you're the first judge. You know, previously we've had amazing judges come through, but who've worked on short films, who have worked on features, who have worked. But you're the first. You know, because of my love of the work that you've done that's come before you, it was someone. You know, you're someone who I wanted to be part of the festival, and also it's so interesting to hear, because most people who who put their work forward in the festival is, here's something that means something to me. Here's something that myself and a group of writers have decided they've wanted to create. Whereas you've come into work, which is like, here, especially with Buffy or with that 70s show, here's a long-standing entity. You need to fit what you're writing around what's come before it.
That's
and
a whole.
It make sense.
Yeah, and two things. By the way, I don't want to discount passion. I don't want to say, I'm just saying you can't only follow your passion. I think, the more personal, the better. Whenever I go and pitch things, I try to find my personal connection. I found it on 70 show. I found it on Good Witch. I found it on Buffy because I was a fat adolescent without a lot of friends who discovered,
target audience.
We discovered friends in the theater department, which is why we wrote an episode about the talent show, which became, we're just outsiders. And then, of course, we had a ventriloquist dummy killing people, but it wasn't the dummy. But so don't discount your passion, because I could see some of the personal things going on in lives. It's just that you also have to hit the marketplace. And so, I'm just, as a television writer, I prostitute myself to the highest bidder. That's kind of the challenge of being a television writer. And it wasn't my job to write Dean Batali's voice on Buffy. It was my job to write Joss Whedon's voice. It was my job to write Mark Brazil's voice on that 70s show. And so that's a different skill. And this is where I kind of like differentiate between those who want to write and produce films, which is really more going to be your voice. Television, you're going to be doing other people's voices. Yes, when you create shows, they want to know that you have your own voice coming in. But anyway, so it's a different sort of skill, and you have to develop it differently. Everybody wants to write pilots. I came up in an era when you wrote spec scripts, other people's scripts. Like I say, it was the Simpsons script that got us Duckman. And I still encourage television writers to take your favorite show and write an episode or two of it and see if you can get their voices, because that's a different skill. But most of my career has been a challenge to get my passions and my point of view into other people's worlds. So I got it into that 70s show every now and then, got it into Buffy now and then, got it into Good Witch now and then. But it's a different sort of challenge.
It's a great trick if you can find it, to somehow find your own voice, but also just, shoehorn it into what is already existing.
Yeah, and I was fortunate because my and Joss's voice were very similar, the way we like to turn dialogue and that kind of stuff. But anyway, and by the way,
I think that's a great answer to
I started as a playwright, and then got a job in the mailroom in Hollywood. So that's how I got started.
I think it's a great, advice. Those are like, for what advice would you give someone starting a new project? Because, it's another alternative. It's another side of it, which is, learn how to write for someone else's voice. Learn how to still be a page turner, to go from 1 to page 2 to page 3, but in a style that maybe you're not accustomed to. I would be amiss if I didn't bring Claudia into the conversation. Thank you so much for taking part of this. We'll combine two questions, which is, one, tell us about yourself and the project that you are at the festival with, and also the question on screen right now, if you'd like to just add, what advice would you give to someone starting out for their new project? You have the floor, Claudia. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you so much. Sorry about all the technical difficulties.
I'm not sure what's going on today. I feel like it's getting close to Halloween, so everything is going a little bit
Internet
creepy.
in Australia, I think, is the problem.
Oh, okay.
I'm Claudia. I am the producer and co-director of Breaking Up, which is our film in the London Webfest, with Jess Stefanos, who wrote it and co-directed it as well, for our production company Susie, which we've just kind of created to launch our film and for future projects that we do together. Jess wrote the film after she went through a breakup at the end of 2019 when she was living in New York, and sent it to me. We went to school together and done a lot of theatre and drama together, and we'd spent time in New York together, and we always spoke about relationships and, how someone can affect you so much and what that means to feel and to talk and connect with somebody else. And she sent me this script, and I loved it so much and related to it as well. And when she came home because of COVID at the start of last year, we just got our heads together and thought, well, why don't we just do something and make it? And it was the first film that either of us had made together. So everything was new and we were bumbling around, but we got a lot of amazing people on board to help us and make this the passion project that we had always wanted to make. And it's only got 2 characters. Jess plays Steph, and then there's the other character, Nick, and it's basically the last 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes of a breakup and how breakups can come from just nothing. You know, she starts in the shower and we don't see the conversation that has probably led them into this, but we wanted to just focus on the ending of relationships and different things that you might say, and you'll hurt and you'll cry and you'll laugh, and how someone that, you know, you've spent 5 years with in this case can hurt you so dramatically and so much. And yeah, it was incredible. We had just the most amazing time learning and getting new people on board and making mistakes, and now we're putting it in the festival world, which is really exciting.
It's such a beautifully told story. I was talking to James earlier on about Kura, which is that idea of a familiar story that, you know, but told in a new way. And I feel that with the short, which is, we've all been through breakups, you know, for the large majority of us, we've all been in those kind of like those end few minutes where you're trying to make sense of it, but also can't quite find your words.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, Dean and I were talking about this, about kind of going through notes of the different shorts and the different series. And one of the things that Dean was saying, which is like, you start it, and you start watching and you think, oh, you know, I know this. And then suddenly just the writing and the performances, especially, and it's so beautifully shot. And one of the reasons why, you know, all those reasons, should I say, is why it's at the festival, is it's a familiar story told in a refreshing way. You know, it's such a beautifully put together piece. And obviously you've found the right people to make that possible. So for someone with the question that came, yeah, this is, you know, I say we're chatting about
we did chat about it a little bit, and when I saw the title, The Breakup, and then saw it was about a breakup, just 2 people, I go, okay, I've seen this before. And one of the notes I wrote is, this person needs to write for TV, because that sounds like she might have written for theater before, and I'd rather she write for theater, because I would still rather win a Tony than an Emmy. But it was so simple. It just had that. It was just words, but the words were so well put together, and it was just so simple, but it was really it was just words, and the words were really good. And if you can do that for 11 minutes, however many minutes it was, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I always say that to Jess. She's got an incredible way with words. But she writes what she knows as well, which is, I think, really important. And she writes something about stuff that we all are experiencing. So, but in a really, really beautiful and poignant way. Thank you so much for saying that.
So for you know, to answer the question that was on screen a second ago, what advice, you know, if this is your first project within a newly founded company, what advice would you give to someone starting out a new project? Because obviously we've all gone through it, that production side of something, that being part of a team, the ups, the downs, the things that come from nowhere. What's a good piece of advice to someone who's, you know, trying to get their next project off the ground?
I reckon it's probably everyone's going to say this, but just go for it and be aware that you are going to make mistakes, and you have to ask questions. I feel like Jess and I are just constantly asking people questions, and we're messaging different people, and we're watching a million things, and, you know, submitting to festivals. We never thought we would get into London Web Fest. Like, this is just a dream come true. So just continuing to take risks and ask questions, and know that everybody started somewhere. Like you were saying, Dean, you started somewhere, and look at where you are now. That's amazing. Yeah, I think just keep working and do what you believe in. We're passionate about relationships and making art, so that's what we've started doing, making art about relationships.
There was another short web series that came from Australia as well, Love and Captivity, which is just, I don't know if you've seen it, but kind of, again, familiar stories of 2 people trying to date, but this time in the pandemic, but beautifully written, beautifully shot, beautifully acted. And it's amazing how, if you just strip something down to its bare form, and get rid of all the, you know, the hallmark kind of romanticizedness, which, don't get me wrong, I'm a sucker for cheese. it's amazing what a simple story that we've all gone through, how it can affect you. We are quickly running out of time. I'm so sorry, Claudia, but I've got time for a couple more questions. Moving forward in how media is, London Web Fest this year has been predominantly online. We're working towards our award ceremony and our screenings at the beginning of next year. But how has that affected what you do? Like, how, for all of you, how do you see the future for short film, for web series? And how have you fit your work into YouTube, into Vimeo, into subscription-based services? And Dean, yourself, like, has the projects that are coming up, have they changed? I'm sure it would be different answer for everybody, but how are you seeing the future of the projects that you're making when it comes to online content? Silence from everybody. Who would like to answer first? Absolutely nobody. So
I'll say something on that.
Jack was going first.
Amazing. Please do.
I just think that, the way things are going these days, everything's on our phone. And a lot of the people that have seen gross misconduct, I know for a fact, are on the phone. And with things like TikTok and Instagram, where you can go through all these really quick reels, people are after those really quick buzzes now. And, the comfort of their home, COVID's happened, not many people are wanting to go out. And it's a shame that we can't be there in person for these festivals, because there's obviously such a buzz when you can do that. But I think for when we can't, this is still a really great medium. And I think that the online presence is growing. And I think it's a really great way to watch loads of shorts and web series. And I think they're also a really good way for filmmakers and creatives that haven't got the likes of, I don't know, the BBC and stuff like that, that want to make their own work. You can put out a tweet now and find a crew on there. You can find a cast on there. You can do the same on Instagram, and you can start and go out and make it on your phone and upload it on your phone and then watch it on your phone. And I think it just opens doors up to young filmmakers that are wanting to get themselves going.
No, it's very true.
I've never actually made films for the internet before. Like, I've made other short films. I co-directed a feature, and I'm trying to produce some television series as well. But I've never actually just tried to make something only for the internet. And so the series that I created, they're all 3 minutes except for the finale, which is 5. And so for me, just like the trying to get the scripts to be that tight, trying to get a story to fit into such a small amount of time and still be effective on some level I think it's just an excellent learning experience. Because I think sometimes with short films, when we're just practicing, they can get long. They can go on. There's stuff that can be cut and maybe, but when you're working in such a tight format, there's no room for long unnecessary things. It all just has to kind of get cut out. And I think there's something, for me, there's something good about the experience of just having to really just be incredibly judicious about what's going to stay in the script and what we're actually going to film and what's going to end up in the final story. And the other thing that I would say too, that's interesting about putting films on the internet is that actually anybody in the world can watch these, right? And that's really neat. I mean, they still have to find it, which is the hard part, right? The discoverability of web series is obviously, as everybody knows, a very difficult thing. But I don't use Twitter much, and I was on Twitter the other day because my wife got retweeted by Raffi, the children's musician, and she was so excited. So I went on Twitter to check this out, that Raffi and my wife having this conversation, and then I noticed that I had a notification, and somebody in Indonesia had found the series somehow and tweeted about it, and it had like 2,100 likes and 320 retweets, and everybody's like responding in Indonesian about like wanting to watch it at work the next day and all this stuff. I'm like, what? Like,
You never know where your audience is going to come from.
No idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. You know, and so there's people chirping up now from India and Jamaica, and I'm not pushing it out into non. I know that like everybody in India speaks English, but I mean, like I'm specifically pushing it out in Canada and the US because that's where I made it, you know, and that's where the news and press that I've been able to get has been in Canada and the U.S. But it's just amazing to me that people all over the world can find these things, and I know it's just like, well, the internet's all over the world now, but it really is, and I think that opens up an amazing opportunity. You know, like in the stories that I told, there's only one that actually has a ton of dialogue in it. All the rest of them are almost no dialogue, and that again was like another thing. It's like if somebody's watching this with the sound off, how are they going to make any sense of it? Either they can read it, or there's just, you know, you're trying to do visual storytelling as well, and you know, so I'm kind of blathering on a bit, but yeah, that's.
Well, no, horror lends itself to that with visual storytelling. You know, you can create an atmosphere with little to no dialogue because there's a universal fear from everybody that, you know, what creeps us out. You know, what are the creepy bits, so to speak.
Right.
Anybody else? Like, what would your advice be? Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to mention this one because we started out with our little series with a lack of resource. We were like, let's make these episodes short. We watch short content. We watch something that I want to squeeze in, you know, a 10-minute episode before bed because I've been in the menu for an hour already and my sleep time is rapidly decreasing. But we started out, we had 5-minute episodes, we had 15-minute episodes, and we didn't pick and choose a necessary shape. We just kind of let the story dictate it. Once the story was over, that was enough. Things have changed a lot since. Like now that we're into a third season, we're writing TV half hours. But I think we've managed to, with our little show, we created this ensemble of characters, which just has given us such latitude to have enough story there now to have TV halves. But I think, you know, what worked for us as well with being really, really specific about some of the things. I mean, those of you that have watched Coulda who aren't from New Zealand or aren't even from the town, we get messages going, wow, I found it so relatable. Like, how did you nail that down? And we think, well, we thought we were probably going to polarize people by being so specific with detail that was unique to our town and our world. But I think that kind of has struck a chord with, you know, even those of you that have watched it overseas have gone, yeah, I relate to this. I know the feeling of being trapped in my hometown, regardless of the size of it, and wanting to get out there and make more for myself. And I think, you know, there's just those key little hearts of your story. As long as your story is relatable, the format doesn't matter. It can be on TikTok, like you're saying, Jack. A 15-second or a 1-minute story can be as captivating as an hour. But what are you looking for? You know, I think in this age, we might want a TV half hour followed by a 2-hour drama and then a movie. You know, there's different strokes for different folks and different occasions for all of this content. So I'm so stoked with these web festivals because you sort of pop in, meet a few people, check out a few projects and realize like, wow, the scope of what's happening in the world reminds you that, yes, television and TV halves are a great job and, you know, it's a currently existing world, but the rules are getting broken more and more as we step online. And I love that. I think that's really exciting. Let's, you know, we're all ground here.
I think that's very true. It's you know, I'm small town Scotland, and the amount of stuff that rang true from the series is quite incredible. I think that's incredible. We've run over time by 5 minutes already. I think that's a great way to finish it. Thank you all so much. I'm so sorry about the technical difficulties this evening. I'm not sure what's happening on StreamYard. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you want to stick around in the green room, and I will talk to you all afterwards, it'll be great to have a quick chat once this is over. But in the meantime, now we've had a chance to speak to you all, to hear some insights into your creative process, I think it's only fitting that we watch a short clip of all your work as we did at the start. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, remember me? You shouldn't be here. Why not? Contagious. Nah, I already got what you got. What? You think because I'm a grown-up? Believe me, I'm not that grown-up.
Wir sind in 10 Minuten in Einblick. Ich kann dir helfen.
Hey! Lass sie gehen. Ich habe die Polizei gerufen. Ich habe alles auf Video, dein Gesicht, dein Nummernschild.
So, Ellie, this is for your blog, your travel blog? Yeah, Naunus are doing a piece on my blog and they want some photos to go along with it. So I saw your stuff and it's beautiful, really amazing. It's really, really nice to be in one place for work because, I travel so much. It's just nice to have a base.
Yeah. Wait, is it?
Yeah.
Swimmer. Let's get some Palini the other way.
You weren't ready.
I'm just gonna have to check it. Come and have a look. I think that's the shot.
Yeah?
I don't know.
Is this first time getting photos?
No, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it's always weird. It's always weird.
I was thinking about paper cuts.
Yes! You know, David, you could learn a lot from Simon.
Sorry?
He may have unusual techniques, but he's making this company money. You could take a leaf out of his book.
A leaf out of his book? What, like his casual misogyny?
David?
Or when he stole my fucking coffee mug? Or his disgusting eating habits? I'll take a leaf out of his book.
David, are you listening? This is exactly what we talked about in your last appraisal.
Kia ora.
The old library's trying to rent books off here now, eh?
Yeah, I'm still chasing this international scholarship thing. Got the big exam next week.
Good luck. Hey, that's your ticket out of here, then, eh?
I'll still be here for a bit. My pop's getting on nowadays, so I'm just trying to spend as much time with him while we're both still in Kura.
That's good then, eh? I mean, not good, but he's like getting old and fucking dying and shit. Anyway, how's work? How's life? How's fucking anything other than this conversation?
Nick, can you hear me?
Oh, for fuck's sake. Yeah. Yeah, I can hear you. All I can hear is that I'm not enough, you know? God, I really don't feel well. Jeez.
Are you okay?
I just can't believe it's happening.
Thank you so much to all our panel and for you at home for joining us on what is our last of the roundtables for this year. As I said before, how quickly 12 months has gone by. We're busy gearing up for our live award ceremony in London, which is happening in January, but we will be back in full swing for our 2022 season in February. Don't forget, we'll be announcing our winners on the 5th of November, and then you can watch all of our winners in our live screening over the weekend, late November, and you can watch all of our award-winning shorts and web series as well. Until 2022, thank you so much for being part of the London Web Fest. We can't wait to start a new season. Thank you to all involved, and have a great weekend. Good night.